The company can't afford your weakness, your dead weight. Get the F out of here. Brent didn't say it with anger. He said it with satisfaction, like he was finally getting to cross something off a to-do list. I didn't flinch, just looked at him once, the way you look at a puddle and calculate how far to step over it. Then I reached into my jacket and handed him an envelope. Sealed, heavy paper, my name on it in sharp black ink. He didn't open it. He just stared at it like it might explode. I turned, walked out. 15 years. No thank you, no handshake, no HR formality. Just Brent, who once thought OSHA was a startup. My name is Jack Connolly. I'm 47. I worked at Veltrac Systems from the day they opened their first manufacturing line. Back then it was just 3 of us in a warehouse with bad plumbing and worse coffee. I was in charge of logistics. Made sure things moved, stayed accounted for, didn't blow up in shipping. By year 5, I was managing compliance across 5 states. By year 10, I was training teams overseas. They used to call me the fireman, not because I saved things, but because I made them too boring to catch fire. 3 years ago, I started getting migraines. Thought it was stress. Midlife. Poor diet. Whatever. Then came the fatigue. Not just tired. Heavy. Like gravity changed its mind about me specifically. I started taking sick days. Then more. Then doctor visits. The diagnosis wasn't gentle. Neurotoxic exposure linked to airborne particulates from a failed insulation batch in Building C, the one with the renovation signs they never removed. Turns out, the air scrubbers hadn't worked right in over a year. I filed a report. Quietly. Internally. No response. Then I got reassigned. Smaller office, less responsibility, less visibility. Brent stopped inviting me to strategy briefings, stopped looking me in the eye, and last Friday after my 5th day on medical leave I got the call. Not from HR, from Brent directly. "Come in Monday," he said. "We need to talk." He fired me in the break room, coffee machine wheezing behind him. One intern watching from the hallway with a protein bar half unwrapped. The envelope I gave him, that was my lawyer's letter. Prepared by the Veterans Legal Services Division. I'm a former Navy mechanic. That building didn't just make me sick. It violated 3 federal codes on workplace hazard compliance. 3 days later, Veltrac Systems was swarmed by auditors. One of them, a woman in a gray blazer with an expression like dried cement, pulled up blueprints I hadn't seen in a decade. The warehouse was locked. Employees were sent home. Brent went silent. That morning, I had 87 missed calls. None from Brent. All from numbers with area codes I recognized. Lawyers, journalists, old co-workers suddenly remembering I existed. I didn't answer. I made tea. The kind my daughter calls old man leaf water. She sat next to me at the table. "Are you going to sue them?" she asked. I didn't reply. She looked at the envelope on the counter. Same seal, new address. Then she smiled. "I hope they owe you enough to buy a boat." That evening, I checked my email. One new message, no sender. Just a subject line, "Before they make it worse." Attached, a short video clip. I played it once. Brent, in a boardroom, arguing with someone off camera, shouting something about leak containment, and he kept copies. At the end, he looks straight at the lens and says, "He was supposed to disappear." I closed the laptop, didn't smile, didn't move. Then I stood, picked up the envelope again, slid it into my coat pocket. Tomorrow I'd be meeting someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a name I used to say only in NDA briefings. But tonight, I rested. Not because I was tired, because I wasn't anymore. When you spend 15 years breathing recycled solvents and dusted asbestos, your body stops whispering. It starts yelling. First it was the cough, dry, constant, like a warning light I kept resetting. Then came the migraines, pressure behind the eyes, like my skull owed someone rent. I blamed the weather, age, stress, anything but the walls that hummed, until I collapsed in the break room. Right there, between the vending machine and the cracked microwave, no one wanted to report. The foreman called it a spell. HR called it concerning. My daughter called it bullshit. She was 12, too smart for euphemisms. Her name's Leah. And the day I woke up in the ER with tubes in my nose, she looked at me like I'd lied to her. Like working myself into a coma wasn't noble. Just stupid. She wasn't wrong. That's when I filed the formal request. An air quality assessment. Internal. Anonymous. The results came back with more redacted sections than answers. But one word slipped through. Benzene. I didn't need a dictionary. I needed a lawyer. The VA assigned me one, free of charge. A combat vet perk I never thought I'd use again. His name was Ruben. Wore square glasses and carried silence like a weapon. He didn't promise revenge, just justice. He asked questions I hadn't considered, about inspections, ignored memos, and why the janitor always wore thicker gloves than the engineers. Within a week, he had documents, signed, stamped, buried in compliance folders no one expected anyone to read. Turns out the HVAC contractor flagged airborne toxicity levels 4 times in 3 years. Each time, Veltrax marked it pending review, then locked the report. They knew. Worse, they planned around it. Ruben found a memo outlining cost analyses, settlements versus renovations. Legal buffer acceptable. That line made me laugh. Not loudly, not bitterly, just quietly, like someone finding a fire escape welded shut and realizing it wasn't an accident. I kept working through it all, not because I believed in the job, but because I wanted to see what they'd do when I stopped pretending. 3 weeks later, I handed Brent the diagnosis: leukemia, early stage, environmental trigger likely. He looked at it like I was offering him a crossword puzzle. "We're not equipped for this kind of liability," he said. I said nothing. HR called me 2 days later. Polite voice, scripted empathy. They offered a transition package, half of what I'd get if I sued and won. I didn't respond. Instead, I printed every OSHA violation I could find, took them to the Department of Labor. Ruben filed the formal complaint. Then I waited. And so did they. Veltrax didn't blink. They'd buried worse. I was just another disgruntled employee in their eyes, a minor bump on a spreadsheet. But on Monday morning, something shifted. Brent didn't show up to the 9 a.m. safety briefing, neither did legal. At 10:12, 2 black sedans parked out front. Unmarked jackets, laptops, clipboards, OSHA and the VA. They walked in like they already knew the layout. By noon, the line workers were sent home. By 2, the servers went offline. By 5, every manager's email account was locked, and the fire exits were finally unchained. I watched from my car, didn't smile, didn't gloat, just waited. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Ruben. "Brent wants to talk, says it's urgent." I stared at the screen, then deleted the text. Let him wait. The email came at 7:41 a.m. Subject: immediate action required body. You have 48 hours to cease and desist all defamatory claims. Continued violation will result in legal escalation. You are being monitored. No signature, no warmth. Just the cold echo of corporate panic dressed as authority. I didn't reply. I looked out the window. Same Toyota Camry, same tinted windows, parked across the street for the 3rd day in a row. They weren't subtle. At 10:16, my bank app showed a frozen transaction. Pending review, regulatory hold. Same account Veltrax used to pay bonuses. Same account I used to refill Leah's asthma meds. Her next dose was in 4 days. I didn't say anything. Just stared at the number. The minus sign blinked like a slow pulse. By noon, the local news had it. Former Veltrax employee allegedly spreads misinformation after termination. They even found a picture of me from a company picnic in 2014. I was holding a corn dog. They cut to Brent. "In all honesty," he said, blinking too fast, "Jack was always intense, passionate, sure, but not always uncooperative. Then he smiled, the kind of smile you learn in media training. I didn't break anything, just rinsed my mug and dropped it in the sink. It cracked anyway. At 2:45, my neighbor Marie avoided eye contact when we passed by the mailbox. At 3:10, someone unfriended me. Old colleague. Sent a message before blocking me. Hey man, just trying to stay out of it. Hope you understand. Sure. At 5:30, the doorbell rang. Not a package. A uniform. The man handed me an envelope with a practiced nod and walked off without a word. Veltrax Industries versus Jack Connolly. Theft of proprietary information. Breach of non-disclosure. Intent to harm reputation. I called Rubens. He sighed before I finished. Don't panic, they're posturing. You still have the logs? All of them. Then let them dig. I nodded. Didn't say what I was thinking. Let them dig. Let them see what they buried. At 7:12, I collapsed in the hallway. Just a sharp sting behind my eye, then blood. Not a nosebleed, a leak. Leah ran in from the kitchen and froze. Dad, I'm fine. The towel she handed me was white. It wasn't white for long. By 8:00, she was asleep. I went down to the basement. Behind the boiler, under the false floorboard, was a metal box I hadn't opened in 12 years. On the lid, old O-piece. Inside, laminated safety manuals, internal memos from Brent's first year, a cassette marked V18 cooling loop incident, and a badge. Belonged to Rafi Mendoza. Disappeared during the coolant redesign in 2011. Official story: relocation to Spain. I picked up the USB drive I'd tucked beneath the foam insert, labeled in my handwriting, only if cornered. I put it in my pocket. Left the rest. Not yet. At 10:27, the doorbell rang again. No car on the street, no Toyota. I looked through the peephole. Brent, not on camera, not on TV. Here, face pale, shirt soaked through. He looked up once, then down, voice low. We both might die if you don't listen. And then, he reached into his coat. By the time the first OSHA agent stepped onto the lot, the janitor was already filming. Brent's voice carried through the open bay like a reality show villain who hadn't realized the cameras were still rolling. No masks today, he barked. And I don't care what the clipboard says. This shipment moves now. I watched from across the street, coffee in hand, no disguise, just distance. By 10 a.m., they'd cordoned off the West Wing. By noon, the hazmat suits arrived. And by 2 p.m., Brent was swearing into a camera he didn't know was live. They didn't arrest him. Not yet. But they didn't let him go home either. The video leaked 2 hours later. Someone tagged me on a Reddit thread titled, Boss Calls Toxic Exposure Monday Problems. It had 1 million views by dinner. Leah saw it before I did. Is that the guy? She asked. I just nodded. She didn't smile. She just kept watching. Then asked, what's going to happen to them? I didn't answer. The company's statement came the next morning. We take employee safety seriously. These claims are under internal review. Classic. No apology, no responsibility, no mention of the guy who was escorted out of the building 3 days earlier with blood in his mouth and a folder of medical records. I printed the statement, highlighted the words internal review, then faxed it to the Department of Labor. Again. Underlined it this time. That same afternoon, Veltrax's HR sent me a cease and desist letter. Claimed I was disrupting internal processes by sharing unauthorized recordings. Funny, considering I hadn't posted a thing, but I scanned the letter anyway and forwarded it to my lawyer. He replied with a single word, excellent. 2 days later, they came for Brent's laptop. He resisted. Big mistake. Turns out he hadn't just been ignoring safety protocols. He'd been falsifying reports. Weekly air quality logs, employee complaints, even some blood work data from routine exams, deleted or accidentally misplaced. His signature was on all of it, including mine. That's when it stopped being a labor issue. It became evidence. The CEO, Galen Murch, finally made a statement. He blamed middle management failures. Brent was suspended, pending investigation. But it was too late. 2 former employees had gone public. One had stage 3 lymphoma. The other lost partial lung capacity. They weren't looking for apologies. They were looking for precedents. That week my lawyer got an anonymous tip. A whistleblower, still inside Veltrax, said Galen had authorized disposal of expired solvents in the employee lot. After hours, no paperwork, no trace, except for one invoice buried in a shipment manifest from 2 years ago. Guess whose name was on the approval line? Mine. Except I'd been on leave that week. We filed a motion, requested full access to internal logs, security footage, and employee medical histories from the last 5 years. The judge approved it. Veltrax filed an emergency appeal. Denied. 2 subpoenas were issued the next morning. One to Galen, one to Brent. Brent's lawyer tried to deflect. Galen's team stayed silent. But someone else didn't. An old colleague from procurement called me after hours, said Galen had been in damage control mode all week, and that he'd started circulating a rumor that I'd tampered with my own reports, trying to sabotage the company after being terminated. Apparently, he thought I'd panic. Instead, I printed it, highlighted sabotage. Faxed that too. Friday morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no voicemail. Then a text. The janitor wants to talk. I met him at the diner off Route 7, neutral ground. He didn't order anything. Just took out a flash drive and a note. Said he didn't trust the cloud. Smart man. He'd seen something, he said. On a night Brent thought no one was watching, and he'd kept a copy. But it wasn't just footage. It was audio, and it had Galen's voice on it. You delete the footage, I'll delete your file, and no one ever hears about the solvents. I looked at the janitor. He looked at me. Then he said, check the timestamp. It's the night you were hospitalized. By Monday morning, the video was no longer just viral. It was evidence. The Department of Justice had it. So did every local affiliate. Even the janitor's niece had apparently used it for a school project. Veltrax went quiet. No tweets, no press releases. Just a memo leaked to Bloomberg. Veltrax Systems has entered a voluntary period of legal compliance review, which in corporate means we're screwed, but politely. Then came the hits. First, a letter from a Veltrax property manager. My old house, and the one they helped me finance as part of their talent retention initiative, was no longer considered covered under my exit clause. They wanted the deed back, within 30 days. Or else. Cute. I forwarded it to my lawyer with 2 words, file counter. Next, my bank account froze. Apparently, someone filed a claim that I'd falsified medical deductions in my last year of employment. An internal Veltrax email, conveniently redacted, was attached as evidence. Took half a day and a personal statement to unfreeze it. The branch manager didn't say anything, but he did offer me coffee. Twice. Then came the one that hit deeper. Leah got pulled out of chemistry class. Some other kid, son of a former Veltrax exec, said I was the reason his dad lost everything. She didn't cry. She just asked if I really did it. I said, no. I did less than I should have. She didn't speak after that, just went to her room. The next day, I found a letter on my doorstep from my ex-wife's attorney. She was reevaluating the custody agreement, citing instability in my living conditions and recent confrontations, which I assume means me going to court to not die at work. I almost stopped. Almost. Then I got a message from Marco, a former line manager. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. Said he was in the ER, trouble breathing. Docs thought it was just age. Then they saw the scans. Chemical scarring. Same signature as the solvent we used in 19. Except Marco never worked cleanup. He'd just stored some pallets in the wrong place. Twice. He asked if it was connected. I didn't answer. But when I got off the phone, I opened the drawer, the one I hadn't touched since the audit started. Inside was a flash drive, labeled 07 to 14, 2021, locker room, night shift. It showed me, bleeding into a sink, barely standing, as 3 supervisors looked in and walked out. My lawyer said it wasn't admissible as direct evidence, but it didn't need to be. It was context, it was pattern, and when paired with the janitor's audio, we had something bigger. He called in a favor. His cousin worked for a U.S. attorney's office, not local, federal, the kind that didn't just write cease and desist letters. They filed motions, class action ones. By Thursday, the paperwork was in. We weren't suing anymore, we were indicting. Galen had gone quiet. Brent had lawyered up. But the janitor, he kept talking. He handed over a box of tapes. One of them had Brent's voice bragging about flushing old barrels out the back before inspection days. Another had Galen discussing how some exposure's good. It weeds out the weak. My name came up too. Connolly's clean, but too clean. Might flip. They weren't wrong. Then the final message. Private number. No voicemail. Then a text. Promoter's office. Call us. Your status just changed. When I did, the woman didn't introduce herself. She just said, your name just moved from plaintiff to key witness. You're going to want protection. I didn't ask why, I just changed the locks. The trial didn't start with a bang, it started with a cough. Brent's, right there at the defense table. Sharp, wheezing, like irony had a respiratory system. He looked smaller in a suit, like a kid dressed for court by his mom. Except mom wasn't there, and the court wasn't here to play. Galen never showed, claimed medical complications, but the prosecutor had his voice on tape. They played it, twice. One juror shook his head. Another just stared. The phrase weeds out the weak echoed longer than anything else said that day. I wasn't asked to testify first. They saved me. Let the others go before. The guy with partial lung failure. The mother who lost a pregnancy after fainting in Bay 3. The janitor. Each one added weight. Not just to the case, but to the silence. When I was called, the room was already quiet. I didn't cry. Didn't raise my voice. I just told them what I'd been told. Don't ask too many questions, Jack. You're not paid to think about air. Then I showed the video. Paused it. Zoomed in. There was Brent, sipping coffee while I bled. There was Galen, walking past the safety board, with its fake compliance stickers still flapping loose on the corners. There was me, still trying to finish the shift. The judge didn't look up. He just said, let the record show. Exhibit 32 is consistent with systemic negligence. And that was that. 3 days later, the verdict came. Veltrax Systems, guilty of gross negligence, falsification of federal records, and exposure of employees to hazardous materials. Brent, criminal liability, obstruction of justice, and falsification of internal health data. Galen, pending extradition. They'd found him in Switzerland, with a new name, and a younger liver. As for me, the Department of Labor issued a formal apology, not for what happened, but for the delay in addressing it. Classic. My lawyer said the settlement figure was the largest in that state's labor court history. 7 figures. He asked if I wanted it lump sum or structured. I said, just make sure it's enough for Leah to never need a job that comes with a badge and a respirator. He smiled. It is. Leah asked if I was happy. I said, I'm breathing. She said, I don't mean that. I didn't answer, just handed her the check. She looked at it like it was made of ash, then hugged me. Brent tried to appeal, cited pre-existing conditions. Judge said, so did the building. Motion denied. Veltrax filed bankruptcy. Employees scattered. Some started a nonprofit for workplace safety reform. They asked me to join. I declined, said I'd done my part. They said I'd be remembered. I said, I hope not. I'd rather be forgotten than become a case study. Then came the part no one saw coming. Brent's obituary, 6 months later. Heart failure. No foul play. No lawsuit. Just a paragraph in the local paper. right below an ad for an air purifier. I didn't celebrate, didn't toast, just underlined one line with a pen. He is survived by his ambition, and left it at that. Last week I walked past the old Veltrax lot. It's a dog park now. Kids running, sprinklers on, no masks, no clipboards, just air, clean. I sat on a bench, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't cough. The gentleman's revenge isn't loud, but it's always personal. If this felt personal, make it personal. Subscribe now, and don't miss tomorrow's story.